Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for tuning into this Your Overseas Home webinar on Portugal's Golden Visa, which we described as investment routes to your visa in Portugal. My name is Richard Way, a member of the Your Overseas Home content team, and I'll be hosting this session. It's great to have you all with us, whether you're watching live or our recorded version, which is available through our on-demand webpage. Golden visas are a type of investment visa scheme that enable you and usually your family to obtain residency or citizenship in a country by investing there, typically but not exclusively in a business, financial institutions or funds, and depending on the country, in property. For non-EU citizens, including Britons and Americans, they can be a useful and relatively fast way to gain a flexible foothold in Europe. Portugal's Golden Visa has been one of, if not the most popular Golden Visa in Europe. Despite changes to its rules in the past 18 months or so, it remains a highly attractive option for non-EU citizens. That's as much as I want to say. I'm not the expert, because we're very lucky today to have a specialist in this area who's going to talk about Portugal's Golden Visa, give us all the detailed information, the ins and outs, to help you get along your way and decide if it's the right option for you. And that specialist is Jason Swan from international financial services provider Holborn Assets. And I know they have a branch called Holborn Pass, which specializes in the residency visas. Jason is both a citizen by investment expert, and he's also a qualified financial planner. He spends his days advising and helping international clients obtain golden visas in Portugal and other places around the world. Welcome, Jason, from sunny Algarve.
Yeah, thanks, Richard.
So we've got about 45 minutes for this webinar. Jason's going to do a presentation for us, so I'll let him introduce himself and do that in just a second. But we also encourage audience participation. So we want to hear from you. Having Jason here is a great opportunity, having him here live to answer questions, so let's make use of it. You can ask questions by using the questions tool that you should be able to see on your dashboard. But we'll wait till the end of the presentation to address the questions. I'll pick them up and I'll field them to Jason. Okay, that's enough from me. Jason, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks, Richard. And yeah, of course, as you mentioned, thank you for the great introduction. I'm going to try my very best to cover everything that you need to know about Portugal's Golden Visa. And yes, it's like I said, it's a live session, very much interactive. So feel free to say hello and drop any questions in as we go. And naturally, I'll likely be able to answer the majority of questions as we go through. But if I do miss anything, feel free, as I say, to drop some questions in, and we'll make sure, time permitting, that we cover everything today. So without further ado, my name is Jason Swan. I'm one of the senior partners for Holborn Assets. I'm based here in Portugal. I've been in Portugal in the south, in the Algarve now for about 4 years, give or take. Not that you can probably tell by my lack of tan, but I do see the sun every now and then. And before Portugal, I was in Spain for 5 years as well. And as Richard mentioned, I'm a fully qualified financial planner, and I do spend a lot of time talking to my clients around structuring their income and their assets and their taxation in line for becoming a tax resident in Portugal. However, more and more now I find myself talking about the Golden Visa program, which launched over a decade ago now, and Holborn Assets have successfully submitted now over 10% of the world's applications for Portugal. Myself, I think we've done around about 250 applications just in the past 2 years. We maintain a 100% success rate, and any questions you have around the visa program, money matters, or just generally what it's like to live in Portugal, I like to think I'm a relatively handy guy to ask any questions. But that's me. And the Holborn Assets, we date back to 1998. We manage over $3 billion between, I think, 21 offices now globally. And about 6 years back, we introduced Holborn Passport, which is a part of the Holborn Group, which is dedicated to help our clients achieve residency and citizenship by way of investment. And of course, today we're going to focus on Portugal. And as far as what what it is that we do. It is an all-encompassing service for clients that are looking to achieve the Golden Visa and, of course, move through to the passport, which we can apply for after 5 years. But more on that shortly. We will help kind of manage the whole process from start to finish. It all begins with applying, of course, for Portuguese tax numbers, setting up your Portuguese bank account, choosing a suitable investment, and we liaise with all the parties involved, such as the bank managers, the fund manager, the tax office. We help with the translation of documents, and we'll accompany you on the day for your biometrics as well in Portugal to do our very best to keep you entertained on what is normally a pretty soul-destroying day, queuing up for your photos and your fingerprints to be taken. But yeah, if you get a chance, type in my name onto Google, have a look at Holborn Assets and Holborn Passport, and you'll see lots of client reviews. You'll see many awards that we've won within the industry, and of course for our exemplary level of customer service as well. But we shall jump in. So for those that are just at the beginning of their Golden Visa journey, the program itself is a 2-year visa. It's a VIP pass to live, work, or simply sunbathe in Portugal without any restrictions. And we can renew the visa every 2 years for as long as you like. But the idea being is that after 5 years have passed, we can apply for the Portuguese passport, which allows you and your family to effectively have 27 passports all at the same time, because you can then live or work in any of the EU states. And the Portugal route is by far the most popular program in Europe. It is very much seen as the gateway to Europe due to its, there's only 2 countries in Europe that will allow you to get a passport without physically having to live in the country. The minimum stay for the Portugal program is only 2 weeks in every 2 years. It works particularly well for those that are not necessarily looking to move right now, but perhaps thinking of a plan B for the future, or maybe thinking about their retirement plans. And again, you can work towards becoming a European citizen without actually having to move to Portugal. And there's only Portugal and the Malta program that allows you to do that. And the difference with Malta is that it's over €1 million to do that, compared to half of that sum for Portugal. But that's what it is. It's tried and tested. There's been now over 21,000 successful applications since the program started in 2012, and long may that continue. We've seen, Richard, an upward trend since the election in the US. I don't know why that might be, but since November last year, we've seen about a 300% uplift in applications for the Golden Visa, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. I often get asked if the program is closed as well. The program did very nearly close back in 2023, but it's very much alive and well. It likely will close at some point, but at the moment, it's business as usual and continues to be the most popular route to Portugal. Now, as a Golden Visa holder, there are many benefits, apart from you get to see me as often as you like, and of course enjoy the 300 days of sunshine each year. More importantly, you get access to the healthcare system, which often comes up. Compared to some countries in the world, having access to free healthcare is a big plus. And the Portuguese healthcare system, I think, is the 4th highest rated healthcare system in the world. For family and children, you also get access to European education. And depending on types of income and your personal circumstances, there can be some favourable tax treatment to be had as well for both new and existing tax residents. And we'll come on to that shortly as well, and kind of I'll explain a few things that you need to be aware of as far as taxation shortly. But other than that, lots up for grabs, and of course it's not a bad place to live, whether you're down in the south with me or prefer the city centre of Lisbon. A quick geography lesson here for those that have not been to Portugal, which strangely is quite common, actually. I speak to a lot of people that have never even been to Portugal that actually want to apply for the visa. But I'm down in the south in a little town called Albufeira in the Algarve. I have the city centre in Lisbon, and of course Porto in the north being the 3 most popular destinations for new residents. But in my opinion, you're not going to go too far wrong no matter where you end up. So there you go. There's all you need to know on the geography of Portugal. Now let's get stuck into the investment criteria. So again, the idea is that by investing a sum of money, you're able to get that access to live or work in Portugal without any restrictions, and ultimately move through to getting a passport after 5 years. Now, to do that, we need to choose from one of the qualifying criteria. The first is you have the option to set up a business, and if you create 10 jobs, the reward for that will be to receive a golden visa. Probably not something that you'd probably do just for the sake of getting a visa, but if you have plans to expand your existing business or maybe open up a new office, that may be a convenient way to get the visa. You can make a donation if you're feeling generous. You can donate 250,000 or 500,000 euros in different ways to the Portuguese government. After, I think, about 2,000 applications we've done so far, I don't think we've ever done an application for the donation, but I don't know why that might be. Maybe people aren't that generous, but it is an option nonetheless. But more predominantly, we see applications for investments, whereas, of course, you get to keep your capital, and the goal is, of course, to make some profits throughout the duration. Now, the investment categories are either number 4, you'll see here, to invest into some form of venture capital or investment fund, as long as it meets a particular criteria, which we'll cover shortly. Or you have the option to invest directly into an existing Portuguese company, as long as that company will maintain a certain number of jobs as a result of your investment. But yeah, I'd say probably 90% of applications we see through some form of investment. And we're going to cover this a little more detail shortly. And there is, of course, a very wide range of types of investment that you can choose from. Property is no longer permitted to qualify for the visa. That was a change back in 2023 when the program very nearly closed. But yeah, the program continued, but the government removed the opportunity to buy a property and get the visa. You can still buy a property, it's just that you need to now have a separate investment to get the visa as well, in line with these routes that we see here. So that's it, that's how it stands as of today's date. I've added in a few variations to the capital required as well. Now, formally, we have the route of 250,000 donation or an investment of 500,000. Now, in addition to that, there are some, like I said, there are some variables. And earlier last year, we've seen more applications now to finance an investment of 500,000, whereas the lender assumes the investment risk, and they do that for a fee of 168,000. And by comparison to a donation of 250, we've seen again more of an upward trend in those looking to simply pay a smaller fee of 168 and for someone else to take on the investment risk. So that's very much a walk-away option. We'll come back to that shortly. Investment-wise, again, all investment routes have to have a minimum investment of 500,000 euros. However, there are 1 or 2 qualifying options out there at the moment which pay an upfront return instead of an annual interest, to the point where the upfront return can actually be used towards the 500,000 euros that must be invested to qualify for the visa. The one in question pays an upfront return of 101,000 euros, which is effectively 6 years interest, all paid upfront. And there is also an option currently that offers a loan facility of 50,000 euros as well, which means that you can invest as little as 349,000 of your own capital and still walk away with a healthy profit as well. But more on that shortly. Again, any questions as we go through, drop them in. I'm going relatively swiftly through the slides. We've got quite a lot to cover, but hopefully that makes sense so far. Okay, as I mentioned before to Richie, we've seen a pretty big uplift in applications from the States since November. 2023, we saw there was a 30% increase in Americans looking to move to Portugal. But on the back end of the election last year, we saw that increase even further. And there are a few things to be mindful of if you are an American citizen. The taxes are a little different as an American passport holder, which is for another day. However, the important part on this is that we've seen, again, an upward trend in Americans looking to use retirement accounts as a way to fund their investment. And this is an alternative route to making a withdrawal and potentially paying taxes to withdraw and potentially paying penalties to withdraw early, but actually investing from within a retirement account, which for US tax purposes keeps everything within that account. So for any questions on that, again, please do get in contact. It's not a service that we provide directly, but as part of our process, we can introduce you to a consultant in the US who's able to provide you some more information on that as well. Now, some basics. Who qualifies for the Golden Visa? Super easy. As long as you don't already have a European passport, that's the first tick. You need to have a clean criminal record. And you need to, of course, make an eligible investment. And lastly, it's a horrible thing to have to do, but you need to spend at least 14 days in Portugal every 2 years. And as long as you can tick those boxes, you will be successful for your application. Unlike other visa routes such as the D7 and the D8, you don't have to become tax resident in Portugal. You don't have to be here for 6 months every year. There isn't any income requirements or saving requirements. It is as simple as that. That is all. We have had some success with clients that have had some misdemeanors in many years gone by, but on the criminal record. But in the main, as long as you've got a relatively clean record, you should be okay. Family members can also be included. There is one main applicant, and that main applicant can add as many family members as they like, as long as they consist of either parents or children, or your partner, of course. Don't forget your partner. Parents can be automatically included if they're over the age of 65. Portugal assume dependency without any evidence required. Children up to the age of 21 can also be included as well. And yeah, married or unmarried is fine as long as you live at the same address. I think that the largest application I've done so far, Richard, is a family of 13 people. Last year, we got 13 people all on the same application. We had step-parents and step-children, both sides of the family, and great value for money on that. Everyone managed to get the visa with the same investment. So, yeah, again, any questions on that, feel free to drop them in. The process as a whole, bit of a busy slide, but in short, this is what happens behind the scenes. Step one, if the Golden Visa is something of interest, is of course to schedule some time to speak, and we'll understand what exactly it is that you're looking to do and what your requirements are, and we'll start to talk through a bit more detail as to what to expect. Once we begin the process and once we've confirmed your investment selection, we'll begin by applying for Portuguese tax numbers. We'll then set up your Portuguese bank account. We'll gather all the documents that are needed for the application, and then within around 2 to 3 months, 8 to 12 weeks approximately, we'll have everything finished and your visa application submitted. And that's submitted online to AIMA through the portal. And that is the day at which the 5-year clock begins to tick for the application for your passport as well. That change actually came in last year as well. The government announced that the 5 years now begins from the date of application rather than the date that you receive your visa, which is great news because no matter how long the visa takes to receive, it's still now a maximum of 5 years to apply for the passport. So that's the checkpoint. And once we've submitted the application, we'll await the appointment for the biometrics. The biometrics appointment is the only time at which our client needs to come to Portugal to have the photo and their fingerprints taken. Other than that, everything is done remotely. And yeah, as long as you don't pick up a criminal record whilst you're in Portugal, it's just then a case of waiting for the visa to be issued. And it looks a little like this one here at the bottom. It's not actually golden, contrary to belief. It just looks like all other visas, but this is, of course, when we have then access to Portugal. So as a brief recap, and then the pathway to citizenship includes, like I say, up to 3 months to successfully submit the application once all the preliminary work has been completed. We can expect the visa in approximately 6 to 12 months thereafter to be received in hand, and that visa will last for 2 years. And as I mentioned before, we can renew the visa as many times as we like, but there will be at least 2 renewals between when you receive the visa and when we apply for the passport. During that time, you will need to pick up some basic Portuguese. You will need to pass an A2 language exam at some point if you do wish to apply for the passport. Our clients typically do one of 2 things, either to crash course Portuguese just to pass the test a few months beforehand, or actually studying Portuguese and learning properly over that 5-year period. I won't tell you which side of that I'm on, but my Portuguese is just as bad as my Spanish. Luckily, I can still speak quite good English, which is helpful in the Algarve. But yeah, as long as you've got the Portuguese under your belt, we'll apply for the passport after 5 years. And yeah, shortly thereafter, it is mission complete. You have the 4th best passport in the world. I can't remember the top 3 off the top of my head, but based on, of course, the access then that you have to travel, you can, as I mentioned before, live then in any of the EU member states without any restrictions. Even if you don't end up coming to Portugal, you're able to move to Italy. You can live in Spain. You might fancy going to Germany, however you wish. But take it from me, Portugal is the best place in Europe. But either way, you'll have all those options open to you. And for those that don't already enjoy the freedom of being able to travel globally, I mean, the likes of us Brits and Americans, we have the luxury of visa-free travel to most countries around the world. But for some nationalities, it's a case of applying for a visa every time you have to go on holiday. But as soon as you got the passport, you then have visa-free travel to over 190 countries worldwide, and then you can go on holiday wherever you like. So there you go. That is the passport. That is the path to the path to passport. Okay, so far. So yeah, other than that, hopefully not too many questions just yet. I'm going to go through a few slides, if it's okay with you, Richard, just on the investment categories, and then we can open up some questions as well. Okay, super. Right. So let's briefly look at investment options. Again, if you want to consider the donation route or setting up a business, those routes are not necessarily something that you need my advice with. However, of course, with our legal team, we can help structure the business for you, or we can talk you through the process to make a donation. For me, however, I would talk you through the investment options, whereas it is a hands-off route to get the visa, and you get to keep your capital and, of course, move to making some profits over that visa period. Now, there are a few rules to abide by, and if you wish to invest into some form of investment fund, it has to meet a few criteria. And the first one is that the fund has to be approved and regulated in Portugal by the CMVM, which is the regulatory body here in Portugal. The fund cannot invest into real estate, either directly or indirectly, which is the change that came in 2023. The fund must invest also into Portugal. At least 60% of the funds must come into Portugal. So, for example, you couldn't have a Portuguese fund that tracks the US stock market. Likewise, you couldn't have an English fund or a European fund that invests into the US. For example, it's got to be both. You've got to have the Portuguese fund and be investing into Portugal as well. The minimum investment, as we've mentioned before, has to be 500,000 euros. And best practice is to keep the investment until you have the physical passport in your hand. We want to make sure that the investment that you choose does not mature after a couple of years and you find yourself without a valid investment and ultimately jeopardize your visa. So it's best practice to, again, have an investment that you can remain invested in for as long as you need to be. And then when you have the passport, you're then free to withdraw the capital and proceed how you wish. But that's all. Other than that, you can invest into any sector. Obviously, some common sense when choosing your investments. To be aware of exactly what it is that you're investing into. I hear lots of. I have clients often ask me about some weird and wonderful investment propositions that they've come across on the internet. Some of them, there are some great investments in Portugal. There are some speculative investments in Portugal. And, first and foremost, very important to be mindful of the security that you have for your capital. There's venture capital funds, anything from investing into Portugal's next theme park, of what else next, a movie production, things like this. So you can, where you can qualify for the visa, but inherently have a very high level of investment risk if that venture is ultimately not successful. If the movie turns from the big blockbuster to a big fail, then these things need to be factored in if you're going to go down the more of a less traditional investment route. Be mindful of how long your capital is tied up for. Again, in reality, we only want to be invested for around 6 years. A lot of investment funds can tie the capital up for over 10 years, which is not ideal. You don't necessarily want to be bound by the rules of the Golden Visa for longer than you need to be. Be mindful of fees. Portuguese funds overall are quite expensive if you compare to the rest of the world. There can be quite significant setup fees, management fees, exit fees, performance fees. So again, make sure you have a very transparent breakdown of exactly what the costs that are involved. What is the investment risk, which can be assessed in different ways? If you are investing from the US, be mindful of whether or not it is compliant for reporting back to the States as well. Not all funds are particularly friendly for US nationals. And where you can, always see if there are any additional incentives on offer as well. Perhaps you can have free legal fees in some cases, or there may be complimentary stays in Portugal and things like this. But first and foremost, always be sure of the security that you have for your capital. You do not want the visa to become a cost of 500,000 euros. But other than that, you can invest in any sector. These are some of the more popular investment sectors in Portugal. Whether renewable energy, whether it's investing into the wine industry, a little bit more interesting than some, but you can invest into any sector you wish. You'll hear me talking a lot about the tourism and the hospitality industries. We've seen the tourism industry increase by almost 20% year on year since 2023. The tourism to Portugal last year, there was a new record for Portugal. There was first time ever 30 million visitors flew into Portugal. So we're seeing more and more people now come and see what Portugal has to offer, which is great for, of course, the tourism and the hospitality industry. As a very quick snapshot, obviously there are varying investment funds to choose from. My advice is always to, like I say, if this is something that you want to explore, please book in some time, drop me an email, and we can make some time to talk in more detail around the different fund managers that are available with qualifying funds. But as a brief overview, there are approximately 30 to 35 qualifying funds in Portugal right now. And as we mentioned before, they vary in investment risk appetite. There are low risk investments with smaller returns, and there are up to very high risk investments with potentially very high returns, but of course increasing risk on the capital. Different time periods, different fees, different returns. There are fixed options. For a fixed investment, you would expect around 4% per year. For something that has a variable performance, again, it can vary quite dramatically depending on the fund manager. Where possible, if you can find an investment where you have further security for your capital, if you can find an asset-backed investment fund, that's a big plus, so that you're not reliant just upon the fund manager itself. But again, in the event something goes wrong with the fund manager, there is a second layer of security with some tangible collateral as well. Few and far between, but there are some out there. So feel free to ask on any of these topics, and we'll go into some more detail. Other than that, yeah, super quick overview there. As some brief examples, this is currently a fixed investment option that qualifies for the program, whereas you can invest into the hospitality sector, also diversifying into healthcare, technology, and food and retail. The upfront return is €101,000. The capital required from the investor is 399. The loan facility is available with this as well, €50,000. So as long as you have the 349, then you're good to go. There is a guaranteed exit from the 6th year of 500,000. So it's very simplest form. You have 399 that goes in and 500 that comes back out when the passport's issued, or from year 6. It is an asset-backed investment as well, so we have that additional security for peace of mind. And a nice to have is you actually have 3 weeks complimentary stay as an investor in Portugal every year for your minimum stay for the visa, which of course is just 2 weeks every 2 years, but you have your accommodation covered as well. So yeah, super quick overview as a fixed option. If you prefer something more adventurous and to go for some bigger returns over that time, again, another example here, whereas there is the largest fund manager in the country of Portugal with nearly €5 billion under management, has an investment fund that has exceptional performance over the past 10 years. The fund manager dates back to 1989. And yeah, we still have a high level of security as far as the institution, but the performance is variable depending on how well the fund performs over those years. But the technology industry as a whole has done pretty well over the past decade. But yeah, in this example, we've seen over 15% per year come through. And lastly, the walkaway option is very simple. So if you do want to qualify for the visa with as little cash as possible, it can be done with just €168,000. Now that is a cost of €168,000. It's not an investment, but you pay €168,000 upfront to the lender for a 7-year loan of €500,000. The investor then burdens the investment risk. The 500,000 is invested into a qualifying fund, and for the investor, you don't have that kind of concern of the investment performance as an alternative. But there you go. Other than that, of course, speak to an expert. If you do have any questions, we've done many applications. If you have any questions on anything that we've covered, please do get in touch. As a little old photo, and I've not got very much hair at that point. But yeah, but moving on quickly, if you do want to stay in touch with the latest news, you might just want to take a snapshot of the QR code that's on the screen at the moment, and through the channel starting very shortly, we'll have access to the latest government announcements and law changes within the Golden Visa program. Early access to, of course, new and upcoming qualifying investments that are released from different fund managers across the board. And there'll be some expert commentary from some of the top law firms in Portugal, some fund managers, and of course, myself passing some commentary as well. But other than that is everything that you need to know on the Portugal Golden Visa right now. Hopefully that is okay. If any questions, you can, of course, make the most of our Q&A session now. But if you'd like to have a personal discussion in private, you can, again, scan the QR code on the screen. Drop me an email should you wish. And thank you for joining. And I hope that was helpful, Richard. Is that okay?
It was very thorough, very thorough. Thank you, Jason. You certainly covered off pretty much everything, but there are some questions, which is great. One thing I'm going to say straight away is when you've gone into the details about the investment funds and mutual funds, that you guys will offer guidance on choosing one, because I don't know, I speak for myself. I know a bit about investing in funds in the UK, but if you're doing it abroad and you've talked about some of the fees and the rules, it is worth, unless you've actually done it before, you guys will help with people, match them with something according to their risk and their their appetite for risk and how much they actually want to put forward into the fund, and if they want to use some of the financing options.
Yeah, and my job ultimately, Richard, is to make sure everyone has the key facts, so we can look at any investment fund. We can provide all the transparent information so that clients can choose their own fund, and decide which is best suited for them. And we'll of course, once we've done that, we can then begin the process of the application.
Okay, let's get into some of the questions. We've got a couple that relate to pensions, actually. So you mentioned about using pensions in the US, and we've got a couple that talk about pensions in the UK. Can I transfer funds from a UK pension fund to an investment visa? And the other one actually refers to a SIP as well, so a personal pension. What's the situation with using those funds?
Well, from the States, we've seen more clients using the retirement accounts as a source of funds for the visa. It can be done by use of a self-directed IRA, with the formation of a US LLC and some planning in Portugal. For US tax purposes, everything stays within the retirement account compared to making a withdrawal where you pay, of course, taxes for selling assets. And so, at this stage, I would say it's just know that it can be done. It has been, like I say, it's been more common this year. And for the specific details, once we have a one-to-one discussion, I can introduce the clients to an attorney in the US who'll be able to talk through the process and how to structure their retirement accounts in preparation for sending funds over to Portugal. But
and for US citizens, though, if you've got UK pensions,
UK pensions is an interesting one. I've not actually done a UK one. I've not tried and tested a UK one. Someone asked me this the other day. It's possible in theory, but it very much depends on the restrictions from the UK pension. We've seen many Americans do it. Not done one for the UK just yet, but from the Portuguese side, as long as the investment capital comes from an account held in the client's name, or held in a company name, whereas the investor is the sole shareholder, then it will suffice for qualification for the visa. But as to if it can be done from the UK, that would be a good conversation perhaps with the pension advisor that the client has in the UK, and we can perhaps have a joint three-way Zoom call to work out if it can be done.
Okay, interesting one. So we've got another question here. I think you've kind of answered this. Investing in a venture capital fund, is it refundable at the end of 5 years? Well, I guess that when he says refundable, can you exit the fund? Does that depend on the fund itself? And you said ideally 6 years, didn't you?
Correct. Yes. So again, very much depends on the investment. I mean, if you invest badly and the investment goes down, then you might not get the 500,000 back. But as long as you don't choose a high risk investment, then you would expect that you will have the capital still there later down the line, and that is part of the due diligence process to make sure you know exactly the risk involved with the investment that you choose. But yes, I mean the funds that we talk about, they're the most popular funds that our clients are investing into, don't have a tie-in period. So the idea is that as soon as the passport's issued, the units are sold from within the fund, the capital comes back. If it has a fixed exit of 500,000, it will just be a lump sum of 500,000. If it's a performance-based fund and it's performed well, it could be 600,000. It could be whatever the performance is over that time. But yes, the money is there to come back with some profits and cover the costs of the visa, for the government and the legal fees as well.
Most clients like the flexible ones where there's no time. It's as and when you're ready after 6 years that they'll take their money out. So they've got the option of when they want to. Yeah.
Correct.
And another question, just on this: do most clients go for asset-backed funds, or is it a mix? Do some of them like the slightly high risk equity based ones? Is it?
It's a bit of a mix. I mean, I would say the majority of my clients find it stressful enough moving country and sending €500,000 to a foreign country without the added stress of then tracking the Portuguese stock market, see if their investment's going up and down. So for the majority, a fixed return with a maximum security for capital where it is asset backed is the preferred choice. But also other investors prefer to target bigger returns. And for equity based funds, you'll find that they're not asset backed in the main. So it's a bit of a mix. Just depends on the client, really.
Okay. Another question here from Andrew. I think you have answered this in a way. If you get a Portuguese Golden Visa, and I'm assuming that's you get your residency, you've got your residency with it. Yeah. Can I live in France? Can you live in another EU country until you get citizenship, or is the Golden Visa for Portugal applicable for residency purposes only in Portugal, or
it is? Yeah. It is just for Portugal. It is just for Portugal. So you can still access other parts of Europe. For most nationalities, you'll still have access to up to 3 months at a time in other EU countries. But the visa only gives you full-time access to Portugal, and it's when the passport's issued that you then have full-time rights to other countries as well.
Do most clients want to get citizenship, or are they happy just getting? Because you mentioned something called permanent residency. So is that different to getting your residency? Is that something you get after 5 years anyway? Or?
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, the visa is the first part. You have the Portugal Golden Visa is a temporary visa. It lasts for 2 years. But after 5 years have passed, you can apply for permanent residency and you can apply for citizenship. By default, we do both at the same time, but for some nationalities, you can't have dual nationality. So we have to have the permanent residency and keep their existing passport rather than do Portuguese citizenship. But in the main, yeah, that's the ultimate goal, because once you have the passport, there's no more renewals, which means there's no more costs and there's no minimum stay, and then you can enjoy any country in Europe.
And you can go to any country, any EU country, can't you? Yeah. So that's got to be the ultimate goal, isn't it? Yeah. Another question: when does the investment have to be made in the application process? So, at what point do you actually invest in the fund?
Well, the investment is made once, first of all, the bank account is set up, and we have the tax numbers. We have all the documents together. Copies of ID, proof of address, criminal record certificate, maybe marriage certificate, or birth certificate sometimes for children. But it will be made around about 8 to 12 weeks after we begin the process. And then once the investment is made, we'll have proof of ownership of a qualifying investment, which is then uploaded to the portal with AIMA along with the application for the visa.
Okay, and just on the application again, you mentioned you only need to go to Portugal unless you want to go anyway, but for the biometrics part of the process. So in reality, someone listening today could contact you via email or WhatsApp, and then you could start the process and take you right the way through the process remotely until the point of biometrics. So you don't need to actually fly out to Portugal until you get to that stage, and then after that, that's the only point you would need to. Yeah.
That's right. You're very welcome, of course, to come over and meet in person. But yeah, it's all done remotely, and we try and make it as easy as we can. But yeah, the only thing we can't do is do the fingerprints for our clients. So we do need them for that part.
Okay, great. Thank goodness for modern technology. Here's a good question. So what happens if the fund folds? For some reason it comes to an end before you've got your passport. Do you have to reinvest to keep your application alive? And then linked to that, is there a risk if you do the 180,000 payment for someone Yeah, are there risks involved with the 168,000 route for the fifth? Just outline how that works again with the structure of that. So there's two parts to the question really. What happens if the fund comes to an end, and are there risks involved with the route where you put down 168 and then I think was it through a loan or it's the 500,000 threshold?
The first question, if the fund folds, then the good news is no, you won't have to reinvest because we need to evidence that you have made the investment. But you'll have much bigger problems than worrying about the visa. You'll of course be out of pocket 500,000, which is the more pressing part. So in that event, the good news is you wouldn't have to reinvest, but you would be down 500,000, which is the more pressing part. If a fund does fold, or a venture cap, any investment, if it becomes of zero value, then yes, you can lose money. As with many investments, so it comes down to selecting wisely, of course. But the 168 option does give a full peace of mind. There is no investment risk at all for the client with that. The investment risk is bound by the lender ultimately, and at the end of the visa period, the units from the fund are reassigned to the lender regardless of the value. So whether it goes up or down, it makes no difference to our client. And you just pay the 168. It's basically an upfront interest, and it's just a walkaway option with no investment exposure.
They could do very well from it as well, couldn't they? I suppose the lender.
Well, it's a good deal. It's a pretty good deal. 168.
Well, you wouldn't want to think about it, would you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fund, of course, that the lender is very happy to invest into. So they have the 168 and they have the profits, but if they choose badly, they also get burdened with the losses.
Exactly. Okay, that's answered that. Thank you. Is there an age limit for children to be included in an application?
There isn't a formal age limit. Up to the age of 21 is where children can be added without any proof of dependency. Portugal automatically assumes children are dependent up until that age. For children over the age of 21, we do need to prove some form of dependency. So more often than not, we can do that by showing proof of enrolment into some form of further education, or some form of financial dependency as well. So there are some additional caveats, like they have to remain unmarried as well if they're over 21. But we just need to prove dependency above 21, which becomes very difficult. Above the age of 26, it's difficult to show dependency as you get older than that. But no formal age bracket. But that's the overview.
Okay. And we've got time for another question. Yeah. Jeff says that if you take the loan option, the 49,000 loan, are there terms and conditions, or what are the T's and C's that come with it?
There's two repayment options. The first option is to repay the loan over 2 years, and the interest is 5% per year. And you basically pay the interest in year one, you pay the interest in year two, and then repay the capital at the end of year two. And the other option is to defer the repayment of the loan so that you don't have to pay back after 2 years, and it comes off the 500,000 at the end of the investment. But to do that, the interest rate jumps to 10% per year and is over a longer term as well. So it does start to eat into the profits a little bit. But both are fine.
Okay. Any more questions? Well, there's a question here about fees. I know you want to answer that on a one-to-one basis, so you can contact Jason directly about fees. And then I was going to ask you mentioned about the taxation of foreign arrivals in Portugal. That, of course, they used to have the non-habitual residence regime, which was a very attractive scheme. Is there anything that came to an end? I think it was a year ago or so. Is there anything equivalent, or are there any other incentives or schemes that you can help new arrivals with? Just give us an idea of what it's like as a new arrival.
The NHR program finished in 2023, which was quite a sad day because it offered new residents up to 10 years of tax-free income on things like rental income and dividends. There was a flat rate of tax of 10% on pension income as well, but unfortunately that closed. You can still apply for it up until April this year on the basis that you can evidence that you started the move to Portugal before the end of 2023, but if not, it's now officially finished. There is NHR 2.0, but it doesn't offer the same benefits for passive income. It's more designed for those that are still working, so as an employed or self-employed income. If you work within a highly skilled capacity, you can apply for a flat rate of income tax of 20% per year. But that's about it, really. Other than that, we spend time, of course, with our clients structuring their assets for the future, and there are ways of drawing income from certain Portuguese compliant investment vehicles, whereas you can get up to a 60% discount on the flat 28% tax on the savings and investment income. But that requires a bit of financial planning, which of course we can talk through for those that are becoming tax resident in Portugal. But I suppose the last thing to add on that, Richard, is that remember that becoming a citizen or applying for the visa doesn't make you a tax resident of Portugal. Certainly in the US taxes its citizens, and I'm always asked, what will my tax be when I do the visa? But yeah, Portugal only taxes its residents, so you can have a visa, you can have a passport. It doesn't mean that you'll pay taxes here. It's only at the time that you spend over 6 months of the year in the country before you become liable for taxes. There you go. That's the tax.
That's 183 days, isn't it, in the calendar year? Yeah. If that's anything less than that, you're not tax resident.
That's correct.
Okay, that's a good note to end on. We are over time, but I think we've done all the questions, so that's good. So thank you very much for tuning in and watching that, all our audience, whether you're watching it live now or you're watching a recorded version. Share this with any friends or family who you think might find it useful as well. Of course, thank you very much to you, Jason, as well, from Holborn Assets in Portugal. We appreciate you giving up your time for this webinar.
Very welcome.
A small request from us at Your Overseas Home. If you have found this useful and you have a minute, we'd appreciate it if you'd leave us a review on the review website Trustpilot. And there's a link now that's just come up on the screen. And I have a save the date for you as well, if you're ready to take the next steps in your property purchase or relocation to Portugal. And that's the Your Overseas Homes Comprehensive Virtual Event, which takes place on the 22nd of March. So you'll have a chance to chat and meet service providers in real time on a remote platform. And so that'll include estate agents, financial advisors, lawyers, mortgage brokers, anyone who you might need if you buy a property or relocate to Portugal or other countries. There'll be seminars as well, so you'll be able to get information that way. And you can do all that from the comfort of your own sofa, because it's hosted online and it's free to join. And if I look, yes, there's a link there for you to register. So make use of that. Otherwise, that's it from me. Once again, thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone. And goodbye.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.